what we're going to do to get centered today is actually to pick up on something we did last week, which is just to take a couple. If there's a delay or a stagger, I apologize. There's something funny going on with our internet, but it's nothing we can control at this point. So let us just slow down and settle down and remember the power of humming. So if you weren't here for last week in our discussion with Jonathan Goldman, we learned an extreme and surprising number of benefits, both in terms of meditation and meaning, but also in terms of physiology, to just hum. So humming is your mouth can be closed and you're making the noise. You don't need to say any fancy mantra. You don't even need to say Om. You can just close your eyes, and for a minute and 30 seconds, we are just going to hum any old way. Do it now. Don't feel strange. Do it with whoever you're with. You'll know if you're humming because if you plug your nose, it'll stop. It can be any sound or pitch. And as you continue to hum, I want to talk you deeper into the practice. The humming will let you feel the tightness or the fullness of your breath. The humming will let you feel connected to your body and the present moment. And as you continue to hum, just another minute, as you continue to hum, imagine that this is your resonance with the universe itself. We know that our world is a living energy universe. And this is our way to make our silent, invisible spirit connection palpable, almost tangible, as we hum our way into being, hum our way back to the center. Short or long, if you practice this every day for 5 minutes, open heart, open mind, paying attention to your body, feeling yourself slowing down and settling down, you will find something remarkable. So, take your time, come to that final point. And then just be still. Just be silent. Notice anything that's changed in your body, your awareness. And if your eyes aren't closed, I invite you to close your eyes as we share in this poem. It began so innocently. Was it a taste, a glimpse, a fragrance on the wind? Somewhere, somehow, we were touched by something truly sacred. It was a beauty and bliss, the most intoxicating essence. It was a knowing so complete, a peace so unbelievable, and it drove us into an extraordinary madness, forsaking everything. Not death, not the breaking of this family or friend mattered. There was nothing left for us in this world. Without it, the haunting call, sleep, dream, and waking, it drove us from our lives. We took refuge in the temples, found solace. We lay at the feet of your doorways, burned day. We gave it all until there was nothing left but the only thing there is. Which actually is a poem that I wrote. And this comes out of the book Return to the Sacred. And one of the chapters is actually called The Death Practice. And it's about how we use a conscious relationship to death and dying to wake up. To wake up to the wholeness of life, to wake up to the presence of spirit in life, to wake up to the depths of what it means to be human and our extraordinary connection to all that exists beyond, all that transcends, all that transforms. And we've had a long discussion about death this morning in our live in-person service, and we have had a long discussion about death in our community. Over the last 6 years, every year at this time of the year, we return to examine, sometimes over the course of a month, sometimes just in the Sunday service, sometimes in a workshop or a class, but we always return to the exploration of death and dying and the honoring of those that have gone before. There is so much to say, and so much to say about how death and the conscious willingness to be with death, both in the extremes of our own letting go and in our comforting of those who are physically departing. And yet, we only have so much time in this program, but also in this life. Today, what I want to talk about and come back to again and again and again is one simple, one straightforward message, complex in its own way and evolving. And the message is to remember your ancestors. Remember the ancestor you will be and the ceremonies that bind them. Remember the ancestors that were. Remember the ancestor you will be and the ceremonies that bind them all together. Now, what does this mean? Well, let's step back, and I want to tell you a little bit of a personal story. I grew up in a home that I would call very spiritual, very implicitly spiritual, humanistic, creative, love ruled, nature was important, goodness to strangers, kindness to each other, the celebration of creativity and the dignity of the self. All that was a part of my home. But for different reasons, our spiritual life, our explicitly spiritual life, our religious life was maybe not quite as deep. So we were raised Jewish, and we certainly participated in all the significant rites and passages of our tradition, but it wasn't always connected to the humanists or the humanitarian values of our home. So we never did something because it's what Jews did, or for that matter, what any other tradition did. We did it was because it's what our family believed. Well, the reason why that's important is because for us, like many of you, teachings or philosophies or practices around death and dying were not really brought into the home. The stuff that was for religion or culture was left at the places of religion and culture. And at home, we simply had our own family values. That is true for many people in the modern Western world. For example, when it comes to knowing what to do when someone passes away, or if someone even, God forbid, passes away in your home, unless, of course, that's sort of the last wish of the family, we don't know what to do when people die. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do with ourselves. We aren't taught about grieving. We aren't taught about honoring. There is such a deficit in the lives of so many of us. And my point is that even if we grew up with religious culture, it was very often separated like an activity rather than something that was enmeshed with our daily life. And so even if your culture or tradition had teachings around death and dying, it didn't always translate into your experience of being with death yourself. So this is kind of the beginning story, that maybe you, like me, have a kind of divided relationship with death, in which some areas of your life have certainly had intellectual answers to questions about death, but you haven't quite internalized them. And so you have your own worries and fears and sorrows that arise because of this incomplete and disconnected relationship. Well, years later, meaning as I grew up, I became more and more involved with the lives of Indigenous people. And as I came under the wing of Native elders and healers as a teenager, I started to realize that they did not understand death or relate to death the way that I did at all. They saw the journey of a soul as something that is mysterious and ongoing before the human life, extending through a human life and continuing on afterwards. Of course, as I dove into understanding this, I found that religions and cultures all over the world have this understanding that we are not confined to our human lives in two critical ways. One, that the soul has its own journey, whether it's reincarnation, whether it's going to other dimensions, whether it's being accessed by us, the living, or whether it is about its own evolution, why we are doing spiritual practice. So the first is to say that everyone has a soul, and that the very existence of a soul defeats the very idea of death itself. The second thing that we see that's so prevalent is the idea that there is no way to properly understand. Now check this out. There is no way to properly understand or even engage the human experience fully or properly without the living relationship with the dead. Did you get that? So the first assumption is that we are souls and that the human life is only a part of the soul's journey. And so that when people leave us, we can be sad that we don't have more time with them on this earth. We can be sad that they are no longer in our preferred form. But through the lens of these great traditions, it is not the sadness of their end. It is only the sadness of their transformation, their change, or you might say their leaving us and our present conditions. The second principle is that knowing that is embedded in the ongoing relationship that we must have with those that have gone on. What we discover with this kind of what some call animistic way of living is that we begin to cultivate a different relationship to life and all the energy in it. The basic tenet that we have been told by our ancestors is that around the world and throughout time, we have found our greatest experience of health, resilience, and sustainability as a community, as communities, only when we are in a living dialogue with the spirit world. Now that alone, for most people today, is a pretty dramatic thing to grasp. That your human life is not only bigger than what you control, but it's bigger than what you can see, it's bigger than what you can measure, and your greatest fulfillment is about a relationship with so much more than yourself. It's not just about your intuition. It's not just about your relationship to a higher power, but our ancestors told us that if we want to awaken again to that power that heals us, the power that brings vitality to our lives, then we must also have a relationship to all the energies and all the spirit forms of this life and this world. This is why we return to the power and the significance of ceremony. When we say, remember the ancestors you have, remember the ancestor you will be, and the ceremonies that bring them together, that make them strong, that empower those communities. What we mean to say is that we are all existing within a living energy universe. We are all moving through the cycles of the soul and in time. By cultivating a deep relationship to our ancestors, with open hearts and open minds, we will learn to be great ancestors ourselves. And that this is done through ritual, through prayer, through conscious use of song and offerings, whether we light a candle tonight and put out food to feed those that we've loved and lost, to remember dear friends or family that have passed this year or any time in our lives, but we want to dignify their memory. We want to bring them close. Or maybe we want to take a letter that we've written to someone and burn it outside somewhere safe. Or we want to carry a stone today all day. And remember who it's for, what they've given us, what they mean to us and for us. And then offer it to the land, give it back to the river, or put it out under the moon tonight. The idea and what we have been shown is that the most powerful way to relate to something or someone that is predominantly energy is through the actions and activities that are predominantly energy. In ceremony, what we do, the behavior, is symbolic. It activates something on another level of existence which the spirit world can interact with. This is why we make offerings. This is why we sing songs. This is why we have prayers. It's not a show. It's not a psychological comfort. It is to engage the energetic world and thus enriches our relationship to who and what we are. Our relationship to those that have gone on transforms our relationship to nature, to community, to culture. We need to cultivate that relationship with ancestors, not from a place of clinging, not from a place of attachment, but from a place of staying engaged with a transcendent energy. From a place of staying engaged with the remembering that we ourselves will be those ancestors one day, that we are not limited in time and space to this human existence. When we cultivate a relationship with the spirit world, we are cultivating both a relationship to a greater intelligence, love, and wisdom than that which we access from the simple people, places, and things around us, and we develop a deeper understanding of who we are as individuals. In that living relationship with those that have gone before, one that is forgiving, one that is learning, one that is implicitly honoring, we dignify ourselves and our own lives. We feel the fullness of our own humanity, which extends beyond this physical form and beyond this life. And so this wisdom opens something new. And even in the traditions of those who live in loving relationship with the spirit world, it is often overlooked, the thought, the feeling, the knowing that we too one day will be the next ancestors. That we must ask ourselves each and every day, how are we living as family? How are we living as good relatives? How are we giving of ourselves to the next generation? When we shop, do we think of 7 generations from now? When we drive the car, when we vote, are we thinking 7 generations ahead? This is the way of a spirit-centered culture. This is the way of a culture in which we see ourselves as the future ancestors. When you are remembered in the days to come, will you be remembered as a good relative, as a good ancestor, as loving, as wise, as patient, as forgiving? If you are a model, if your story is a teaching, are you living it to your highest capacity? And when I say living it to your highest capacity, I don't mean success. I don't mean your best life, like you're comfortable and you're getting everything you want. I mean that if the future people of this planet were to bring your story back, were to sing your song, or feel the energy of your legacy, what would that be? Would it be the one who stood up for those that were voiceless? Would it be the one who put the comfort of all before the comfort of self? Would it be the one who made all the difference in their community or their workplace or their family to turn around their impact on the natural world and the environment? What kind of a relative are you? And when you see human beings that are behaving in ways that are disturbing or upsetting or aren't what you like, do you treat them like strangers, like other? Or do you treat them like wounded relatives, like family that you may not agree with, you may not even like, but you love and you hope for, you pray for, you make space for, and if nothing else, you learn from? What does it mean to be a good relative? What does it mean to be an ancestor while you are living? So we must embrace the fullness of life and the spirit world. We must embrace the fullness of ourselves and our spirit dimension. Not just our spiritual dimension, psychological, happy, patient, peaceful. The spirit dimension. The spirit dimension. The part of ourselves that will live on. How do we hold the story around it? And how will we be a part of the highest good for all? But the third and final part of our conversation today, from remembering our ancestors to remembering the spirit that we are, is remembering the ceremony that binds them all together. You see, our ceremonial life is actually one of the most critical ingredients to a healthy, successful, joyful, resilient life. It is often the first thing to go for many of us. Lighting a candle, sitting at an altar, taking time every day to pray. We let it go because of all the things that have been stressed and celebrated and emphasized in our schooling, in our other relationships, in our culture. Making time for ceremony is not one of them. And yet, how do you engage the world of energy without energy practices? How do you engage the intelligence and the power that is no longer physical, except with practices that activate that same part of you? The true reason and power of ceremony isn't psychological or emotional, although those are important aspects of it. They can help us, they can heal us, and so on. But the true power is they allow us in our physical human form to interface and interrelate with a world that is beyond our touch, with a world that is beyond our vision. But we sing the songs to remember. We offer the food, the tobacco, the cornmeal, the salt, whatever it is. We make the offerings to keep that energy vibrant and alive. And when we lose that, we find that life becomes thin, that we become more enchanted with our own minds. We become more enchanted by our own feeling of power and control. We forget to live as spirits. As the police, remember the song from Sting and the Police? We are spirits in a material world. But if you don't feed the spirit that you are with the smudge, with the tobacco, with whatever your tradition does, prayer, rosary, if you don't feed the spirit, then the spirit consciousness grows quiet. It never leaves. We can't exist without it. It's never fully blocked, but it can grow quiet. It can grow weak. And then we perpetuate a cycle of distance and division. Now it becomes harder to sit down for ceremony. Now we feel foolish when we talk to dead people. Now we don't make time for the spirit that we are. Instead, we spend our lives catering to our psychology, catering to our emotions, catering to all that we want. But the great gift of Dia de los Muertos, Samayin, Halloween, is remembering that we are not alone in this universe. That the spirit world, the memory, the feeling, the presence, but most significantly, the love and wisdom that has gone before us remains with us. And there is nothing demeaning about that, nothing foolish about that, no wishful thinking about that. If you go to a group of 1,000 people and you have them close their eyes and you ask that group, how many of you feel like you have ever been contacted by something you couldn't explain? A relative that passed away, a loved one or lover that is no longer on this earth. And you will always find at least half, more, often 70% or more, will put their hands up. If their eyes are closed and they don't feel judged, they don't feel like they're judging themselves, they don't feel like they'll be judged by others, they don't feel like they'll have to explain it. But most of us have had moments inexplicable in which we knew, at least in that moment, that the world is bigger than what we pay attention to. That we, you and me, that we are more than what we pay attention to, and that we lose our priorities. This is why we have this celebration today and in the days to come. Halloween is certainly fun with trick-or-treating and pumpkins and, all kinds of celebrations that go on. But can we let this time of the year be something more? Can we let it redirect us to the power of the Spirit and the self that is soul? I invite you today to go beyond the superficial ideas of death and dying and consider your immortality. Consider your endurance as a soul beyond this life. And whatever happens, whatever is happening, whoever is elected, the soul journeys on. Whatever is before us, there are lessons waiting to reveal the love and wisdom that is ever present. Open your mind, open your heart, and consider a new relationship to the ancestors that were, the ancestor you will be, and the ceremonies that bring us together, that activate our energy bodies, that connect us with the spirit world. So, we're coming to the end of our time, and it sounds kind of foreboding, right? The end of our time, but it comes to the end of our service today. And when we close, I want to offer a little prayer, and of course to read our statement of being, which is not just about affirming our common beliefs in this community, but it's also a way of honoring those that have gone before us. That's one of the reasons why we read it, is to keep their energy alive with us. What will you do today to honor the energy of someone who touched your life, who you loved, who you learned from? What will you do? Can you write them a letter? Can you go on your patio and sing them a song? Will you take them a gift and put it in nature? Or will you prepare a meal to share with them tonight and light a candle with your love? Do something today to reconnect yourself to the spiritual world, to the spirit world, and remember the spirit that you are. We need these ceremonies, and we need this community. So, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your tolerance of the connection problems. I really can't explain what that was all about, but we don't need to explain everything, do we? Thank you for your donations. We're very, very grateful. You can't imagine what your donations mean to our staff, to our board, and to the people that have been a part of this community for decades. Your generosity literally helps us to pay bills, maintain the building, keep this sacred space online and in person, so that people can remember the spirits that they are. And so with that, I invite you to close your eyes with me. Let's celebrate our statement of being and then finish with a prayer. Taking your time, slowing down and settling down. Eyes closed, sitting comfortably but alert. God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. We are individualized expressions of God and are ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. And so we pray to the one that is all. Dear God, grandmothers, grandfathers, guardian spirits, ancestors, hear our prayer and feel our gratitude for the way you have prepared this day for us. May we open our hearts and minds to know the love and wisdom that is available to us. May we open our hearts and minds to remember the humanity that we are a part of. May we remember those that have gone before us. May we talk to them and bless them. Dear God, angels, ancestors, grandmothers, grandfathers, bless those that have gone before us and those that have made the journey recently. Bless those in our community, dear Pam, dear Jean, Jodine, and others. Whoever is in our hearts today, may they be blessed, may they be lifted up, and may they feel and know that we are with them. And we pray that we would each find the courage and the peace to be the good relative that we were born to be. May we find the courage and the peace to remember the spirit and the soul that we are. For all these things and the prayers that remain unspoken between us, we lift them together. No matter who's listening, when they're listening, where they're listening, we share this prayer for the awakening to the fullness of life, to the spirits that we are, and to the peace between generations, one to the next. May we leave a legacy that we are proud of. For all this and more, amen. So thank you again. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for those who come in person. Thank you for those who come online. Thank you for sharing this with other people. Thank you for your donations again. And thank you for your attendance of the classes that we have coming up. Please check out our class and course page on the website. Kathy Humphreys Soul Circles, Explorations, Open Group Drop-In, Thursdays at 11, and my Tuesday Spiritual Experience series starting this week, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. We are grateful for each and all of you. I love you. Thank you. And take care.